Jacob's story unfolds as an epic journey, a saga of faith, deception, and ultimately redemption that resonates through the ages. In a world where cunning often outwits integrity, Jacob's life confronts us with profound and sometimes unsettling truths about human nature and the divine plan. Have you ever paused to consider how God can use flawed and imperfect individuals to achieve his purposes? Prepare yourself for a narrative that will challenge your conventional understandings of justice and mercy as we delve into the surprising origins of a chosen nation. Genesis 25:21 opens the scene with a couple in distress. Isaac prayed fervently to the Lord on behalf of his wife, Rebekah, who was barren. In those ancient times, barrenness was not merely a personal sorrow, but viewed as a heavy curse. For 20 long years, Rebekah carried this burden of childlessness, a torment that can scarcely be imagined, the hopes and fears of a family hanging in the balance. Though God's promise to Abraham was clear, Isaac and Rebekah had yet to see the fruit of that covenant in the form of a child. But God answered Isaac's prayer. However, his answer came intertwined with complexity and portent. Genesis 25:22-23 reveals that the babies within Rebekah stirred and jostled one another, causing her deep concern. Seeking understanding, she inquired of the Lord, who delivered a remarkable prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. This divine revelation shattered natural expectations. From the very womb, God set a precedent that defied conventional human order. The elder son would serve the younger. This prophecy foreshadowed not only the lifelong conflict between her sons, but also foretold the struggles that would define whole nations. The birth of the twins, recounted in Genesis 25:24-26, was dramatic and filled with symbolism. When Rebekah gave birth, the first baby emerged red and covered with a hairy skin, prompting them to name him Esau, meaning hairy. Immediately following was his brother Jacob, who came out grasping Esau's heel, a gesture that would prove prophetic. Isaac was 60 years old at this time. Right from birth, the contrasts between these twin boys were stark and significant. Esau, the firstborn, bore traits that symbolized his rugged and impulsive nature. Meanwhile, Jacob's act of clutching Esau's heel hinted at his shrewd and determined personality. These differences set the stage for their future rivalry and individual destinies. As the boys grew, their opposing natures became increasingly apparent. Genesis 25:27-28 paints the picture of 2 distinctly different sons. Esau blossomed into a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, embodying the masculine ideal of the era. Jacob, in contrast, was a quiet soul, content to remain close to home among the tents, passions and preferences that set them worlds apart. Parental favoritism added fuel to the brewing fire. Isaac, with his fondness for wild game, favored Esau, who could provide such fare, while Rebekah held a special affection for Jacob. This division in parental love sowed deep seeds of discord, a timeless lesson about the perils of unequal treatment among siblings. The brothers' youth was soon to pivot on what might seem a trivial event, yet one that would lead to profound consequences for their lives and the future of nations. Let's dive into a pivotal moment from Genesis 25:29-34. A story that carried enormous consequences for the future of 2 brothers, Jacob and Esau. One day, Jacob was busy cooking a stew when Esau came in from the open country, completely famished. He urgently demanded, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm starving." This hunger was so defining that Esau was sometimes called Edom, meaning red. Jacob, however, saw an opportunity and responded, "First, sell me your birthright." Esau, feeling utterly famished, exclaimed, "I'm about to die. What good is the birthright to me now?" Despite this, Jacob insisted, "Swear to me first." So Esau swore an oath, selling his birthright to Jacob. After this, Jacob offered Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank, then got up and left, showing that he despised his birthright. This encounter reveals a great deal about the characters of both brothers. Esau, impulsive and driven by immediate hunger, was willing to give up a significant honor and responsibility in their patriarchal society for a mere meal. His hyperbolic claim of being near death highlights his tendency toward exaggeration and seeking instant gratification. Jacob, on the other hand, displayed calculated shrewdness. He recognized an opening and seized it, skillfully manipulating his brother's weakness to his advantage. Although modern eyes might question Jacob's ethics, his actions demonstrated a keen understanding of the birthright's value and a firm resolve to secure it by any means necessary. This trade, the birthright for a meal, became a powerful symbol. It embodies Esau's recklessness and Jacob's opportunistic nature. Interestingly, the biblical narrative itself doesn't explicitly condemn Jacob's actions here, but it sets the scene for how this moment would dramatically shape the destinies of both brothers and their descendants. The birthright wasn't just an inheritance of property. It carried deep spiritual blessings and the mantle of leadership over the family. Esau's disregard revealed his short-sightedness and lack of respect for the divine promises given to their ancestors. Jacob's acquisition of the birthright represented just the beginning of a profound journey toward becoming the heir of God's promises. His determination, even if ethically ambiguous, would be a recurring theme throughout his life. This episode lays the groundwork for future events. Jacob's cunning and firm resolve would propel him to great heights, but also entangle him in conflicts and dangers. His story reminds us that even through flawed, imperfect individuals, God's greater purposes can unfold. Jumping ahead to Genesis 27:1-14, we witness another crucial moment in Isaac's life. Isaac was old and nearly blind when he called Esau, his older son. "My son," he said, and Esau replied, "Yes, father." Isaac spoke earnestly, "I'm old now and don't know the day I will die. Take your weapons, your bow and quiver, and go out into the field to hunt some game for me. Prepare the delicious food I love, and bring it to me so I can eat it and bless you before I die." Here, Isaac's age and impaired vision created a scene filled with urgency and vulnerability. Fully aware of his mortality, he wanted to fulfill his paternal duty by blessing his firstborn son before passing away. This moment is filled with anticipation and tension, setting the stage for what would become a defining chapter in the family's story. Leaving this world, the blessing was far more than a mere formality. It was a prophetic and powerful act that would shape the future of the blessed individual and his descendants. Isaac's plan to bestow his blessing on Esau highlights his ongoing preference for his firstborn son, despite Esau having sold his birthright years earlier. It's possible Isaac was either unaware of the agreement made between Esau and Jacob or considered it invalid. Regardless, his intention to bless Esau set off a chain of events destined to forever alter the family's history. Genesis 27:5-10 introduces us to Rebekah's strategy to favor her son, Jacob. She was eavesdropping while Isaac spoke to Esau. When Esau left for the fields to hunt game, Rebekah turned to Jacob and said, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare me the delicious food, so I may bless you before I die.' Now, my son, listen carefully to me and do as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats. I will prepare a meal with the kind of food your father loves. Then take it to him to eat so that he may bless you before he dies." Rebekah's plan was both bold and fraught with risk. By intervening in Isaac's will, she not only defied her husband's wishes, but also placed Jacob in a precarious situation. Her actions reveal a complex mixture of motivations, a yearning to see God's prophecy fulfilled, that the elder brother would serve the younger, her clear preference for Jacob, and perhaps a belief that Jacob was better suited to lead the family. The preparation of the meal was only the opening move. Genesis 27:11-17 gives us insight into Jacob's intricate disguise. Jacob protested, "But, mother, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am smooth. If my father touches me, he might realize I am tricking him and bring down a curse instead of a blessing on me." To this, Rebekah replied firmly, "Let the curse fall on me, my son. Just obey what I say." What? Jacob went and fetched the 2 young goats, which Rebekah cooked into the savory meal Isaac loved. She then dressed Jacob in Esau's finest clothes and covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat's skins to mimic Esau's hairy texture. Finally, she handed Jacob the meal and the bread she had made. This passage reveals Jacob's initial hesitation, rooted not in a moral dilemma, but in the fear of being caught. Rebekah's readiness to bear any curse herself underscores her unwavering commitment to her plan. Their elaborate disguise, down to the goatskin covering, reveals the lengths they were willing to go to deceive Isaac. The tension-filled encounter between Jacob and Isaac is recounted in Genesis 27:18-29. Approaching his father, Jacob said, "My father." Isaac replied, "Yes, who are you?" Jacob answered, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you instructed. Now please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me." Isaac questioned, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Jacob explained, "The Lord your God granted me success." Isaac called Jacob closer, his voice filled with a mixture of doubt and hope. "Come near, my son, so I may touch you and know if you truly are my son Esau." The room was thick with tension. Jacob, desperate to claim the blessing meant for his brother, repeatedly lied, even swearing by God's name to make his deception seem truthful. But Isaac, ever cautious, insisted on feeling his son's presence for himself. Genesis 27:22-23 tells us Jacob approached his father, and Isaac touched him. He said, "The voice is... But the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like Esau's. This moment reveals Isaac's inner conflict. His senses are sending him mixed messages. His ears hear Jacob's voice, but his sense of touch tells a different story. These are the rough, hairy hands of Esau himself. Yet, trusting his touch more than his hearing, Isaac moves forward with the blessing. The blessing that Isaac gives Jacob, recorded in Genesis 27:27-29, is profound and all-encompassing. Sniffing the scent of Jacob's clothes, he declares, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field blessed by the Lord." May God grant you the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you, and peoples bow before you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. This blessing is rich with vivid imagery and monumental promises, welcoming prosperity, political dominance, and a unique spiritual blessing. Importantly, it includes dominion over his siblings, echoing the prophecy whispered before the twins were even born. The aftermath unfolds with dramatic intensity in Genesis 27 through 35. Just after Isaac finishes blessing Jacob, and Jacob has barely slipped away from his father's side, Esau returns from hunting. He brings a delicious meal, hoping to win his father's favor. "Sit up and eat my game, father, so you may bless me," Esau pleads. Isaac asks, "Who are you?" And Esau replies, "I am your firstborn, Esau." Isaac's whole body trembles with shock as he cries out, "Who was it then who hunted game? I ate it just before you came and blessed him, and indeed, he will be blessed." Hearing his father's words, Esau breaks down, letting out a loud, bitter cry, "Bless me too, my father." But Isaac responds, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Isaac's trembling reveals the depth of his horror at the deception. His words, "Indeed he will be blessed," show that he understands the blessing, once spoken, cannot be taken back. It is a prophetic decree, not just a father's wish. Esau's anguish is heartbreaking. Genesis 27, 36, 38 captures his bitter lament. Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has cheated me. First he took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Have you saved any blessing for me? Isaac's reply is somber and final. I have made him lord over you, and his relatives servants to him, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. What, then, can I do for you, my son? The scene closes on a note of irreversible change, with Jacob confirmed as the bearer of the blessing and Esau left to face the consequences of losing both his birthright and blessing. Esau, overwhelmed with emotion, turned to his father and asked, "Do you have only one blessing?" "Please bless me too, father." His voice cracked with sorrow as tears streamed down his face. This moment reveals the depth of Esau's pain, but it also sheds light on his earlier misunderstanding of the birthright's true worth. Only now does he fully grasp the magnitude of what he has lost. His desperate plea for any blessing he can receive is truly touching. In response, Isaac granted Esau a secondary blessing, recorded in Genesis 27:39-40. Isaac said, "You will live away from the earth's richness, far from the dew from heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother, but when you grow restless, you will cast off his yoke from your neck." This blessing, presented in sharp contrast to that of Jacob's, foretells a life filled with struggle and hardship for Esau and his descendants. Yet it also carries a promise, a hopeful forecast that someday Esau will overthrow Jacob's dominance. However, Esau's reaction to this was far from calm. Genesis 27:41 tells us he held a deep grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. Filled with fury, he declared to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Esau's plan to commit fratricide highlights the intensity of his anger and the serious threat Jacob now faces. The danger is immediate, and swift action must be taken. Upon hearing Esau's intentions, Rebekah quickly devised a plan to protect her younger son. She summoned, "You must leave at once and flee to my brother Laban's house in Haran. Stay there until your brother's anger cools and he forgets what you have done. When the time is right, I will send word for you to return." Rebekah's clever strategy not only shields Jacob from Esau's immediate wrath, but also ensures the survival of their family line. Her fear is evident in her words. She does not want to lose both her sons in a single day, and perhaps she fears the consequences that would follow if Esau were to kill Jacob. Jacob's journey to Haran marks a pivotal new chapter in his life, as narrated in Genesis 28:1-5. Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him, instructing, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Leave straight away for Paddan Aram to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. There, take a wife from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful, increasing your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he grant you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of this land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God promised to Abraham." Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way to Paddan Aram to Laban the Aramean, brother of Rebekah, mother of Jacob and Esau days. This passage reveals that Isaac, despite the earlier deception, accepts God's will and knowingly blesses Jacob a second time. His specific instructions about marriage underscore the importance of preserving the purity of their family lineage. Thus, Jacob sets out on his journey, carrying with him not just his father's blessing, but the weight of divine promise, as well as the hope for his future and that of his descendants. And so, Jacob embarks on his journey, leaving behind a family blessed by God and a brother seething with anger. His trip to Haran is far more than a mere escape from danger. It marks the start of a profound spiritual transformation. What unfolds in the chapters ahead will shape his identity and prepare him to become Israel, the patriarch whose descendants would form the 12 tribes of the nation. The tale of Jacob's deceit and flight serves as a powerful reminder that even our human flaws, whether born from ambition or fear, can be woven into the greater tapestry of God's plan. At the same time, it highlights how our decisions carry lasting consequences and reveals the intricate dynamics within family bonds. Genesis 28:10-11 introduces the beginning of Jacob's journey to Haran. It says, "Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he arrived at a certain place, he stopped there for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones from that spot, he placed it under his head and lay down to sleep." Picture Jacob in this moment, alone for the very first time, fleeing his home, laying his head on a cold stone beside a roadside. Vulnerable and exposed, God chooses to reveal himself to Jacob here in an extraordinary and intimate way. The narrative continues in Genesis 28:12-15 with the account of Jacob's famous stream at Dadab. In it, Jacob saw a stairway resting on the earth, its top reaching all the way to heaven. Angels of God were ascending and descending upon this stairway. Above it stood the Lord, who said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you lie. Your descendants shall be as numerous as the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west, east, north, and south. Through you and your offspring, all peoples on earth will be blessed. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have fulfilled all that I have promised." N.T. This stunning vision of the stairway connecting heaven and earth powerfully conveys God's continual presence in Jacob's life. The divine promise reaffirms and extends the covenant blessings previously given to Abraham and Isaac, now personally entrusted to Jacob. Jacob's reaction to this divine encounter is recorded in Genesis 28:16-22:2. When he woke, he realized, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was unaware of it." Overcome with awe and some fear, he declared, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." The very next morning, Jacob took the stone he had used as a pillow and set it up as a pillar, pouring oil over it as a sign of consecration. He named the place Bethel, meaning house of God. Previously, the city had been called Luz. Then Jacob made a solemn vow. "If God will be with me, watch over me on this journey, provide me with food and clothing, and bring me safely back to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. This stone pillar I have set up will be God's house, and from all that you give me, I will give 1/10 back to you." This vow marks a pivotal moment, the beginning of a deeply personal relationship between Jacob and the Lord, grounded in trust, commitment, and divine assurance. For the first time, Jacob recognizes God, not just as the God of his ancestors, but as his own personal God. This moment marks a significant turning point. When Jacob arrives in Haran, as narrated in Genesis 29:1-12, the story builds up to the memorable encounter with Rachel at the well. Jacob's journey brings him to the land of the eastern peoples, where he spots a well nearby. Around the well, 3 flocks of sheep are resting, and a large stone covers its mouth. Since the sheep drink from this well, the shepherds have an established routine. Whenever all the flocks gather, they roll away the stone, water the sheep, and then replace the stone to close the well again. Jacob approaches the shepherds and greets them warmly, asking, "My brothers, where are you from?" They answer, "We are from Haran." Curious, Jacob inquires, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" They confirm they do, explaining, "Yes, he's well." Suddenly Rachel appears, coming with her father's sheep, for she herself is a shepherdess. Jacob notes, "The sun is still high. It's not yet time for the flocks to be gathered. You should water the sheep and send them out to graze." But the shepherds respond, "We can't until all the flocks have gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the well." While this conversation continues, Rachel arrives. Upon seeing Laban's daughter and her sheep, Jacob takes action. Jacob takes action. Demonstrating his strength and eagerness, he rolls away the heavy stone by himself, waters the sheep, and then embraces Rachel. Overcome with emotion, he kisses her and begins to weep aloud. Jacob reveals that he is a relative, the son of Rebekah. Rachel quickly runs to share this news with her father. This meeting by the well echoes past family moments, such as when Abraham's servant found Rebekah. Jacob's effort to remove the stone not only showcases his physical prowess, but also his deep desire to impress Rachel. Laban's reaction, as described in Genesis 29:13-14, is warm and welcoming. When he hears about Jacob, his sister's son, Laban rushes out to greet him, embraces him, kisses him, and invites him to his home. There, Jacob shares his story. Laban acknowledges their kinship, saying, "You are my own flesh and blood." However, Laban's hospitality soon takes on a more businesslike tone, as seen in Genesis 29:15-20. He tells Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Laban has 2 daughters, the older Leah, who has weak eyes, and the younger Rachel, who is beautiful and has a lovely figure. Jacob falls deeply in love with Rachel and agrees, "I will work for you 7 years in exchange for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban consents, saying it is better that he gives Rachel to Jacob than to give her to some other man. He invites Jacob to stay with him. As the 7 years pass, Jacob serves diligently, but because of his love for Rachel, the time feels like just a few days. This work agreement illustrates Jacob's heartfelt devotion to Rachel and paints Laban as a crafty employer. The 7 years of service stand as a testament to Jacob's enduring love and commitment. Labor serves as a striking turnaround in Jacob's story. The very man who deceived his father and brother is now the one laboring faithfully for 7 years. The story of Jacob's deceptive marriage is vividly narrated in Genesis 29:21-25. Jacob spoke to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to lie with her." Laban then gathered all the people of the place and threw a feast. But when evening fell, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob lay with her. Laban also gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as a maid. In the morning when Jacob awoke, there was Leah. Startled, Jacob confronted Laban, exclaiming, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel. Why then have you deceived me?" The irony here is profound. Jacob, who once deceived his blind father, is himself deceived under the cover of darkness on his wedding night. His question, "Why have you deceived me?" seems to echo the same frustration Esau might have felt years earlier. Laban's reply and the terms of the second agreement are detailed in Genesis 29:26-30. He explained, "It's not our custom to marry off the younger daughter before the older." Then he added, "Finish this daughter's bridal week, and we will give you the younger one too, in exchange for another 7 years of labor." Jacob agreed. After completing the week with Leah, Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. Laban also gave his servant Bilhah to Rachel as a handmaid. Jacob lay with Rachel and loved her more than Leah, yet he still worked an additional 7 years for Laban. This arrangement, being married to 2 sisters, inevitably sowed seeds of tension and rivalry in the family. Jacob's obvious favoritism toward Rachel mirrored the partiality that his own parents once showed, perpetuating a cycle of family strife. The children born into this household were caught up in this competitive atmosphere, as detailed in Genesis 29:31-34. Leah bore Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Unable to conceive, Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob, who fathered Dan and Naphtali with her. Leah, noticing she had ceased bearing children, gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob, who then fathered Gad and Asher. Leah later conceived again, bearing Issachar and Zebulun. Finally, Rachel conceived and gave birth to Joseph. This narrative of births brims with tension and competition, each sister striving to win Jacob's affection through motherhood. The names chosen for their children often reveal the mother's emotions and aspirations. Through these years in Haran, Jacob transformed from a young bachelor into the patriarch of a large, complex family. His journey was shaped by deception, hard work, and family rivalries, exposing him to the consequences of his past deeds. Nevertheless, amid all the challenges, God's promise to make Jacob a great nation steadily unfolds. The turning point comes in Genesis 30:25-28 when, after Rachel gives birth to Joseph, Jacob expresses a longing to return home. He said to Laban, "Send me on my way, so I can go back to my homeland. Give me my wives and children, for whom I have served you, and I will have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you." Laban responded, "If I have found favor in your eyes," and the story continues from there, marking the beginning of Jacob's quest to return to his roots. Listen closely. I've learned through divination that the Lord has blessed me because of your presence. He even said, "Name your wages, and I will pay them." This passage highlights the palpable tension brewing between Jacob's deep desire to return home and Laban's insistence on keeping him. It recognizes the undeniable blessings Jacob has brought into Laban's household. The story of Jacob's prosperity as a shepherd unfolds in Genesis 30:29-43. Here, Jacob proposes a seemingly unfavorable deal, asking only for the speckled and spotted livestock from the flock. Yet, through a combination of selective breeding techniques and possibly divine intervention, Jacob greatly multiplies his wealth. In Genesis 30:13, the narrative shifts to reveal the growing resentment among Laban's sons towards Jacob, while God commands Jacob to return home. Jacob overhears Laban's sons grumbling that he has taken everything their father owned and amassed all this wealth at their father's expense. Jacob also notices that Laban's treatment of him has noticeably changed. It's no longer the same as before. Then comes the divine command. The Lord tells Jacob, "Return to the land of your ancestors, to your own people, and I will be with you." The secret plan for departure is detailed in Genesis 31:13, where Jacob shares the situation with his wives, Rachel and Leah. He reveals a dream in which God instructed him to leave. Both Rachel and Leah support Jacob's decision, recognizing their father's unfair treatment. The escape unfolds during the sheep shearing, as described in Genesis 31:17-21. Jacob loads his children and wives onto camels, drives all his livestock ahead of him, and takes all the goods he has accumulated in Paddan Aram to return to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. While Laban is away shearing his sheep, Rachel secretly steals her father's household gods. Jacob deceives Laban by not informing him about his plan to flee, taking everything with him. He crosses the Euphrates River and heads toward the hill country of Gilead. Rachel's theft of the household gods adds a layer of complexity, possibly reflecting her reluctance to completely sever ties with her family. The pursuit initiated by Laban is documented in Genesis 31:22. On the third day after Jacob's departure, Laban learns that Jacob has fled with his relatives. He pursues them for 7 days, and finally catches up with Jacob in the hill country of Gilead. However, God appears to Laban in a dream that night, warning him to be cautious and not speak either good or bad to Jacob. Jacob pitches his tent in the hill country of Gilead, and Laban camps nearby with his relatives after catching up. God's warning to Laban in the dream underscores the divine protection over Jacob, even when Jacob's own actions might be questionable. The confrontation atop Mount Gilead is portrayed in Genesis 31:26-42. Laban accuses Jacob of secretly fleeing and stealing his household gods, unaware that Rachel is the one responsible for the theft. Jacob permits Laban to search the entire camp. Yet Rachel deceives her father by sitting on the gods and claiming she cannot get up because she is menstruating, preventing him from finding the stolen items. Frustrated, Jacob then voices his grievances over how Laban has treated him. "For 20 years I have served you faithfully. During this time none of your sheep or goats miscarried, and I never ate the rams from your flock. I did not present you with animals torn by wild beasts. I bore those losses myself. Yet you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen, day or night. The harsh heat consumed me during the day, and the cold chilled me at night. Sleep fled from my eyes. This was my existence for 2 decades in your household. 14 years I labored for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks. Throughout this time you altered my wages 10 times. Were it not for the God of my father Abraham, the God I revere, the fear of Isaac, I doubt you would have let me leave empty-handed. Yet God has witnessed my hardships and labors, and just last night he reprimanded you." This heartfelt declaration reveals Jacob's deep sense of injustice and his firm belief that divine intervention has been on his side. The covenant between Jacob and Laban is carefully established in Genesis 31:43-55, where they set up a heap of stones as a solemn witness to their agreement not to harm one another. Laban calls this heap Jaga Sahadutha in Aramaic, and Jacob names it Galeed in Hebrew, both meaning heap of witness. The final separation between the two men occurs in Genesis 31:55, when Laban kisses his grandchildren and daughters, blesses them, and departs to return home. With this farewell, an important chapter in Jacob's life closes. He leaves Haran, no longer a young man, but as the patriarch of a large and prosperous family. Shortly thereafter, in Genesis 32:1-2, Jacob encounters the angels of God at Mahanaim. As he sees them, he declares, "This is the camp of God," and therefore names a place Mahanaim. This brief yet significant meeting serves as a powerful reminder of God's ongoing presence and protection, preparing Jacob for the challenges that lie ahead. Next, Jacob prepares for his critical meeting with Esau, narrated in Genesis 32:3-21. He sends messengers ahead to inform Esau of his arrival. When the messengers return, they report that Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men. Filled with fear, Jacob divides his people into two camps, thinking that if one is attacked, the other might escape. Then he pours out a fervent prayer to God. "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the unfailing kindness and shown me. When I crossed the Jordan, I had only my staff, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I fear he will come and attack me, the mothers and their children too. But you promised, 'I will surely make you prosper, and your descendants will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted.'" This prayer paints a vivid picture of Jacob's inner turmoil, torn between fear and faith. He reminds God of his promises while humbly acknowledging his own unworthiness. Alongside this spiritual preparation, Jacob assembles a substantial gift for Esau and sends it ahead in separate groups, hoping to appease his brother. And with this act, the story of Jacob's journey toward reconciliation with Esau reaches a profound turning point. Jacob's preparation for a moment he had feared for 20 long years finally unfolds. Once a fugitive, he now returns to his homeland as a wealthy patriarch. Yet beneath his prosperity, Jacob remains burdened, wrestling with the lasting consequences of his past decisions and his faith in God. This is the backdrop for one of the most profound and mysterious episodes in his life, recounted in Genesis 32:22-32, his intense struggle with an angel at Peniel. That night, under the cover of darkness, Jacob rose and took everything dear to him, his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons. Together they crossed the ford of the Jabbok River. After sending his family and possessions safely across, Jacob was left alone, face to face with a man who wrestled with him until the break of dawn. This nocturnal encounter is a vivid symbol of Jacob's internal turmoil, a fight between his past mistakes and the uncertain path ahead. As dawn approached and the man saw he could not overpower Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, wrenching it painfully out of place. But Jacob persisted. When the man pleaded, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking," Jacob's reply was firm. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." This steadfast determination underscored his hunger for blessing and transformation. "Curious," the man asked, "what is your name?" "With honesty," Jacob answered. Then the man declared, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have prevailed." This change in name marked a profound turning point in Jacob's identity. No longer just the supplanter, he became Israel, the one who wrestles and endures with both God and man. Though blessed, Jacob emerged from this harrowing encounter both victorious and wounded, limping due to the injury to his hip. This limp served as a lifelong reminder of his night of wrestling with the divine. The following chapter, Genesis 33, reveals the moment Jacob had dreaded most, his reunion with his brother Esau. When Jacob finally looked up, he saw Esau approaching with a formidable group of 400 men. Jacob's heart must have pounded as he divided his children among his wives and servants. The maids and their children walked first, then Leah and her children, and finally Rachel with Joseph bringing up the rear. Jacob himself went ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother, signaling humility and a desire for peace. But Esau's reaction was astonishingly warm. Instead of anger or revenge, Esau ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. The 2 brothers wept bitterly, their tears washing away long-held grievances and pain. This powerful moment of reconciliation defied expectations. The brothers' heartfelt exchange continued as Jacob urged Esau to accept his gifts, saying, "Please accept the gift I have brought for you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." Their generosity highlighted the grace that had softened their strained relationship. After this emotional reunion, the brothers parted on peaceful terms. Genesis 33:16-17 tells us that Esau set off on his way back toward Seir, while Jacob journeyed to Succoth. There he established a dwelling and built shelters for his livestock, giving the place its name. Jacob's settlement in Succoth, later moving on to Shechem, ushers in a new chapter of stability in his life. Genesis 33:18-20 records that after Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, he safely arrived in the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp nearby. There, he purchased a piece of land for 100 pieces of silver, planting roots in his ancestral homeland. This moment signals the beginning of a fresh phase of life, grounded in both reconciliation and renewal. Jacob purchased a piece of land from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, and there he pitched his tent. On this plot he built an altar and named it El Elohe Israel, marking a sacred moment in his journey. Yet this newfound peace would soon be shattered by a grievous event involving his daughter, Dinah. As detailed in Genesis 34, Dinah, the daughter Leah bore to Jacob, ventured out to meet the local women. It was then that Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite and ruler of the area, saw her and committed a grave violation. He seized and raped Dinah. This tragic act sparked a chain of dark events. Though Shechem fell deeply in love with Dinah and sought to marry her, Jacob's sons, especially Simeon and Levi, harbored fierce intentions of revenge. They cunningly convinced the men of Shechem that circumcision was a prerequisite for the marriage. While the Shechemites were still weakened and recovering from the procedure, Simeon and Levi launched a brutal attack on the city, slaughtering all the males. Jacob's response to this massacre was one of profound distress. As recorded in Genesis 34:30, Jacob admonished Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble upon me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and Perizzites who live in this land. We are few in number, and if they unite against me and attack, I and my household will be destroyed." In the aftermath of this harrowing episode, God directed Jacob to journey to Bethel for a spiritual renewal. Genesis 35:2-3 narrates Jacob commanding his household and all who accompanied him to throw away their foreign gods, purify themselves, and change their clothes. Then together they ascended to Bethel, where Jacob promised to build an altar to the God who had heard him in his distress, and had been his constant companion. At Bethel, God reaffirmed his covenant with Jacob and officially changed his name to Israel, symbolizing a new identity and destiny. In Genesis 35:10-12, God declared, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." God assured him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will arise from your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I now give to you and your offspring." Following this solemn encounter, as Jacob and his family traveled from Bethel toward Ephrath, Rachel went into labor. Genesis 35:16-20 vividly recounts the harrowing birth. Despite great difficulty, Rachel labored to bring forth her son. The midwife encouraged her, saying, "Do not fear, for you have another son." Tragically, Rachel died in childbirth. Before passing, she named her son Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow, but Jacob chose to call him Benjamin. Rachel was buried on the road to Ephrath, known today as Bethlehem. Her death marked an immense sorrow for Jacob, and the closing of a significant chapter in his life. Not long after, another turmoil arose within Jacob's household. As briefly noted in Genesis 35:22, while Israel dwelled in that region, his son Reuben committed a grave offense by sleeping with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Word of this act reached Israel, further complicating Jacob's troubled family dynamics and casting a shadow over the household's future. Jacob's life during this period is deeply shaped by reconciliation, spiritual renewal, and a series of personal and family tragedies that continue to influence his character and destiny. The consequences of his firstborn status weigh heavily on his position within the family and his future inheritance. Genesis 35:27 records Jacob's return to his father's home. He came back to Isaac's house at Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, also known as Hebron, the place where Abraham and Isaac had once lived. This return brings Jacob's long journey full circle, reconnecting him with his roots. The narrative briefly recounts the death and burial of Isaac in verses 28 and 29 of Genesis 35. Isaac lived to the ripe old age of 180 years, then peacefully passed away. His sons Esau and Jacob came together to bury him, marking a moment of mourning that unites them, if only briefly. The story then shifts focus to Joseph, Jacob's favored son. Genesis 37:2-4 tells us that Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was born to him in his old age. To show this special love, Jacob made Joseph a richly ornamented robe, often called the coat of many colors. This act of favoritism echoed Jacob's own experience as his mother's favorite son, stirring envy and tension within the family. When Joseph's brothers realized that their father loved Joseph more than them, their resentment grew so strong they could not even speak kindly to him. Joseph's prophetic dreams, narrated in Genesis 37:5-11, only intensified this jealousy. In one dream, Joseph saw his sheaves of wheat rise, while his brothers' sheaves bowed down to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. Though these dreams alarmed his family, even his father, they foreshadowed Joseph's future role as the family's savior. A dramatic turning point occurs with Joseph's brothers plotting to kill him. Genesis 37:18-20 recounts their plan. When Joseph came to them, they said, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him in. Let's see what becomes of his dream. Let's see what becomes of his dreams. However, Reuben intervenes. As described in Genesis 37:22, upon hearing their plan, Reuben suggested they not kill Joseph. Instead, he proposed throwing Joseph into a cistern in the wilderness, planning to rescue him later and return him to their father. But Judah's suggestion ultimately carried the day. In Genesis 37:26-28, Judah reasons, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites instead. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." Agreeing to this, the brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern when the Midianite merchants came by, selling him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, thus setting in motion a series of events that would profoundly affect their family's destiny. The deception of Jacob's sons unfolds in vivid detail in Genesis 37:33. They brought Joseph's distinctive robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in its blood. Then, presenting the bloodied, ornate garment to their father, they urged him to examine it. Jacob instantly recognized the robe and mournfully declared, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." This heart-wrenching moment, described in Genesis 37:34-35, shows Jacob rending his clothes, putting on sackcloth, and mourning deeply for many days. Though all his sons and daughters gathered to comfort him, he steadfastly refused, sorrowfully stating, "No, I will continue." Thus, Jacob wept bitterly for Joseph. These years of profound sadness and mourning represent a dark chapter in Jacob's life. Unaware of Joseph's true fate, he lived with a heavy grief no family comfort could ease. The story then shifts to a time of famine in the land. In Genesis 42:1-2, upon learning there was grain in Egypt, Jacob called his sons. "Why do you just keep looking at each other? I heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there to buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." Sending his sons to Egypt for food sets in motion a sequence of events leading to the family's eventual reunion. Simeon's detention in Egypt and the subsequent demand to bring Benjamin on the next trip presents a difficult challenge for Jacob. In Genesis 42:36, his anguish is palpable. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin too? Everything is against me. His hesitation to send Benjamin, the last son of his beloved Rachel, is entirely understandable after the grievous losses he has already suffered. The second trip to Egypt, this time accompanied by Benjamin, is narrated in Genesis 43. Judah's firm insistence and his personal guarantee to protect Benjamin finally persuade Jacob to consent. Genesis 43:11-14 captures Jacob blessing their mission. "If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags as a gift for the man, including balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and take double the silver with you to return the money placed in your sacks, just in case it was a mistake. Also, take your brother along and go back to the man at once. May God Almighty grant you mercy before him, so he will let your other brother and Benjamin return with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." One of the most emotional moments in this biblical narrative occurs in Genesis 45, when Joseph finally reveals himself to his brothers. After his stunning revelation, Joseph sends them back with a message for their father. In Genesis 45:9-11, Joseph urges them, "Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me now. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen. This message reassures Jacob and sets the stage for the joyous family reunion that follows. Jacob received a heartfelt invitation to move to Egypt, a place of refuge amid looming hardship. The promise to sustain him, his children, grandchildren, flocks, herds, and all his possessions was clear. God would provide because 5 more years of famine were still on the horizon. Without this move, Jacob, his household, and all he held dear would face destitution. Initially, when Jacob's sons informed him of Joseph's survival and his high position as Egypt's ruler, Jacob was overwhelmed with disbelief. Genesis 45, 26, 28, 28. They told him Joseph was alive and held authority over the entire land. Jacob was stunned and struggled to believe the news. However, his spirit was revived when they relayed everything Joseph had said, and when he saw the chariots that Joseph had sent to bring him to Egypt. Filled with conviction, Jacob declared, "I am convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Jacob's hesitation was understandable given such profound news, but God confirmed this divine plan directly to him in a vision at night, as described in Genesis 46:4. God called out, "Jacob, and when Jacob, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I will go down with you to Egypt and surely bring you back again, and Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." The journey to Egypt marked a deeply emotional reunion between Jacob and Joseph. Genesis 46, 29, 30. Joseph prepared his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father. As soon as Joseph appeared, he embraced Jacob and wept for an extended time. Jacob then told Joseph, "Now I am ready to die because I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Settling in the land of Goshen, Jacob began the final phase of his life. Genesis 47, 7-10 describes Jacob's meeting with Pharaoh, where Joseph presented his father. After blessing Pharaoh, Jacob was asked his age. He answered, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My life has been few and difficult, not comparable to my ancestors." Jacob blessed Pharaoh once more and departed. The last 17 years Jacob lived in Egypt were marked by relative tranquility and prosperity. Genesis 47:28 records, the Israelites settled in Egypt in Goshen, where they acquired property and grew exceedingly fruitful and were numerous. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and his total lifespan was 147 years. Toward the end of his life, Jacob gave his final blessings, Genesis 48 and 49. He adopted Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own, elevating them to tribal status and reflecting his personal journey. In a significant act, Jacob crossed his hands while blessing them, bestowing the greater blessing on the younger Ephraim. The prophetic blessings, and sometimes rebukes Jacob gave to each of his 12 sons in Genesis 49 contain profound symbolism and foreshadow the future destiny of Israel's 12 tribes. Lastly, Jacob's burial wishes were explicit and firm, recorded in Genesis 49, 29, 22, emphasizing the importance of his legacy and resting place. "As I prepare to join my ancestors, I ask that you bury me alongside my fathers in the cave of Ephron the Hittite, the very cave in the field of Melah, near Mamre in Canaan. This is the burial place Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron the Hittite. There rest Abraham and his wife Sarah, there Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and there I too shall be laid to rest alongside Leah." Jacob's death and the mourning that followed in Egypt come to life in Genesis 49:33-53. After giving his sons his final instructions, Jacob drew his feet up onto the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph mourned deeply, falling upon his father, weeping and kissing him. Then Joseph commanded the physicians attending him to embalm his father Israel. The embalming took a full 40 days, the customary time for this sacred process, and the Egyptians mourned for 70 days. The majestic funeral and burial in the cave of Machpelah, detailed in Genesis 57:13, mark the closing chapter of Jacob's earthly journey. Yet, this is far from the conclusion of his legacy. Jacob's life, shaped by struggle, deceit, loss, and eventual reconciliation, stands as a powerful testament to God's unwavering faithfulness and the profound complexities of human experience. This journey reveals that God can use even our failures and hardships to fulfill his divine purposes. What lessons have you drawn from this patriarch's life? In what ways does Jacob's story mirror your own spiritual journey? If this message has touched your heart or sparked new reflections, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might benefit from it. Jacob's story reminds us all that transformation is possible, no matter where we are. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss upcoming videos exploring biblical figures and the timeless life lessons they offer. Remember, just as God worked mightily in Jacob's life, he desires to work in yours as well. See you in the next video.